Contrary to popular opinion, Medicare is not free. Now, not only do we pay for Medicare all of our working lives, once we go on Medicare, we have to continue to pay, and there's some that even have to pay more. That's called a surtax. Let me explain. So let's begin by talking about the costs that are associated with Medicare even before we begin to take in Medicare benefits. And what happens is all of us that are working, we're actually funding Medicare as well as Social Security. We call these FICA taxes. If you're self-employed, you have self-employment taxes. So right now, if you're working for someone, 6.20% of every dollar that you're making up to a certain limit is going into Social Security. Your employer matches that 6.20%. And so if you're self-employed, you pay the full 14.40. And the limit on taxes for Social Security right now is $160,200. So anyone that's going to make above that does not have to pay any additional Social Security taxes. Now, for Medicare, what happens is we have 1.45% that's going into Medicare, and again, the employer matches that, so 2.90 goes in. If you're self-employed, of course, you pay the full amount. Now, there's no limit on this. In fact, it's unlimited, so every dollar we're making is going to be subject to the Medicare tax. All right, it's either taken out of your check or when you pay your taxes. All right, now, what's going to happen here is this. If someone is a single person and they make above $200,000 of income, or if they're above that amount, then they have an additional Medicare tax from this point forward, and that is 0.90%, almost a full 1%. If it's a married couple that files a joint return, that limit is anything above $250,000. All that income, again, has that additional 0.9%. And so all of us, through FICA taxes, self-employment taxes, are paying into the Medicare system even before we begin those benefits. Now let's talk about the cost to us when we actually begin to take Medicare benefits. Now, the majority of people are eligible for Medicare at 65. Now, not everyone takes it at 65. If someone is covered by an employer-provided plan, if they or their spouses, they can actually start Medicare at any age. Once they lose the group plan, they can come on Medicare. Now, there are some people who actually start before 65 if they're receiving Social Security disability. They would actually begin Medicare on the 25th month after receiving their disability payments. All right, but again, most people were eligible at 65, going to start then or sometime after whenever we retire. And so the costs that are associated with Medicare would be this. Now remember, Medicare has two parts, Parts A and B. Now, for most people, Part A has a zero premium, and the reason is because we've been paying into the Medicare tax system, as I just taught you on the previous slide. We pay into that all of our life, so Medicare says they won't charge us any premium for Part A. Now, the Part A side of Medicare is the inpatient side, or we could call it this way, the hospital and skilled nursing side of Medicare. All right, the B side, though, is something that we have to pay for. Now, right now, the B side is $164.90 a month for most people. Not all people, but most people, all right? And so the B side of Medicare is everything that's going to be outpatient related, and this would also be doctor services as well as what is called durable medical equipment, all right? So A has a zero premium. Now, if I go to the hospital or skilled nursing, I'm going to have some out-of-pocket costs, but for this video, I'm just simply talking about the fixed costs as far as premiums are concerned. We have a zero premium as long as we have paid into the Medicare tax system for 40 quarters, which is basically 10 years worth of work. And most people paid in a lot more than that, but at least we have to have 40 quarters, 10 years worth of work. If someone doesn't have their own, they can draw those from a spouse, maybe even an ex-spouse with certain conditions, even a deceased spouse. But we have to have 40 quarters, and if we do, we'll have A at zero premium. That's 99% of the population. 1% that does not have 40 quarters actually can buy and pay for Medicare Part A. All right, now when it comes to B, again, to be eligible for B, we have to have the 40 quarters paid in, but there is going to be a cost to that. And so this cost is associated to income. And so the majority of people, they say right now 93% of all people are paying the $164.90 for their Part B premium. and the other 7% is subject to an additional amount. That's the surtax that we're going to talk about. But what I'm trying to show you here is there is a cost associated once we go on Medicare. Now, again, we're not talking about the cost of health care right now, any gaps that exist. We're not talking about supplemental plans, none of that. This is just talking about the cost of being enrolled in original Medicare A and B. Now, if someone is paying the $164.90 and they're on Social Security, that actually comes out of their Social Security check. If they're not yet on Social Security and they're enrolled in Part B, that $164.90 would be billed to them on a quarterly basis, or they can set up a bank draft to pay that until they start Social Security. All right, so that's the cost that the majority of people are paying.
Hey, just real quickly, if you're finding this video to be helpful, you can like, comment, and subscribe. And if you do so, that'll let YouTube know that this is helpful information, and they'll send it out to others who also need to learn about Medicare.
Next, let's talk about that surtax that some people are paying, the cost for some. Again, it's just some. We said just a minute ago is that 93% of all people have A at 0 premium, they have B at $164.90 this year. It's 2023. All right. But for 7% of the population, again, they're going to have A at 0 premium, but their B starts at the $164.90. But now we're going to have that surtax. Okay. Now, this officially by Medicare is called an IRMA. It's an acronym, IRMA, and it stands for Income Related Monthly Adjusted Amount. And so this 7% of the population are people that are considered to be high income by Medicare standards. And so what that means, if someone is a single filer, if their income is above $97,000, $97K above, then they're going to have a surtax. If they're a married couple that file a joint return, not a separate return, but a joint return, that number is $194,000. If they're above, again, they're going to have that surtax. Now, this income number we're talking about is actually called the Modified Adjusted Gross Income. And so if someone starts Medicare, let's say they're starting in 2023, Medicare is going to look back at their modified adjusted gross income from 2021. If we're starting Medicare or on Medicare in 2024, they're going to look back at 2022. All right? And so they always look back 2 years at our modified adjusted gross income to determine if we're going to have a surtax or not. And they do this every single year. And so what happens is this. This modified adjusted gross income is a number that's reported by the IRS to Medicare to determine your Part B surtax if you have it. And so this is this. This would be line 11 on your tax return, which is your AGI. And they add line 2A, which is a tax exempt interest. All right, so they take your tax exempt interest and add it to line 11A, and this becomes your modified adjusted gross income. And so again, if I'm a single filer and they look 2 years prior, I'm above 97,000, married jointly above 194, then I'm going to have this surtax that I'm going to be responsible for, or the IRMA. Now there's 5 different levels of income. I'm not going to look at all those right now. You can find all these very easy. If you work with us, we're happy to point those out specifically. But the point is we have 5 different levels of income. And so as our income increases, so will our IRMA increase. So what I'm going to do is show you the lowest IRMA amount and the highest IRMA amount. And so the lowest IRMA amount would be anyone that's a single filer that is between $97,000 to $123,000. All right. And again, this is a single filer, and they would have an IRMA total of about let's call it $78. All right. Now, let me explain this IRMA. Part of that IRMA is Part B IRMA. In other words, you have to pay more for our Part B, but also part of that IRMA includes for the drug plan. So we have to have a drug plan when we're on Medicare. If we don't take one, we're going to be penalized. And so there's a small drug IRMA that's included in that $78. So again, a single person between 97 and 123, there will be an additional surtax of $78. Some of that's Part B, some of that is Part D IRMA as well. Now, for a married filer, it would be 194 to 246. So we have 194 to $246,000, same amount. You're going to have an additional $78. If husband and wife are both on Medicare, each of them would have to pay the IRMA. Now, again, we have 5 levels, so that's the lowest. The highest level is going to be someone that's a single filer, and they are above $499,000. Okay, so they're above that amount. For a married couple filing a joint return, that number is going to be $750,000 above. And so that IRMA amount is going to be $470. All right, and obviously there's 3 different levels in between. And so depending upon where you're going to fall will determine what that IRMA amount is going to be. Keep in mind, remember, part of this is for the Part B IRMA and part of this also for the Part D IRMA, just a small on the D side. So for some of you, because you're considered to be high income, as they look back at your 2 years prior, you're going to have to pay these additional amounts. Now, frankly, it can be disappointing if this is the first time you've heard of it, but like I always say, this is a very good problem to have. And so if you're these kind of income numbers, you're accustomed to paying more in taxes, and now Medicare says we're going to give you this additional tax as well because of that high income. Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, I want to invite you to go right up here and actually click on a link that will allow you to watch what I call the Medicare Essentials Workshop. It's a workshop that I did that really is going to show you everything you need to know about Medicare from A to Z, how to enroll, when to enroll, and the plan options for you. So go to that link and check it out. And now lastly, I want to address the issue of the possibility of being able to get rid of these surtaxes, these IRMAs. And you do that through what's called the appeal process. And so let me explain how this works. So let's say someone is going on Medicare 2023. Well, we know that Medicare is going to look at 2021 modified adjusted gross income to determine whether there is a surcharge or not, a surtax. And so again, if we're a single filer and we're at $97K or above, we're going to have an IRMA. A couple, $194,000 or above. But let's suppose that they're looking back at 21, but I made the decision to retire in 2022, or I'm going to retire in 2023. And because of that retirement or some other life-changing event, that has caused my modified adjusted gross income to decrease below these amounts, or possibly just maybe below, maybe I'm at the 4th level of IRMA and I can be reduced to the 2nd level of IRMA. But the point is, I've had a change of life and a change of income. And so there are 8 possible life-changing events that allow us to appeal to IRMA. Let me read them off to you real quickly. Number 1, they are marriage. So you were single, maybe you had an IRMA, and now you're married, and together you fall below that threshold. Someone who goes to a divorce, same thing could happen. A death of the spouse, work stoppage or work reduction. And by the way, that's the 2 most common reasons people appeal their IRMAs, because they semi-retired or they have retired, and that has changed their income. Now keep this in mind. It doesn't mean that, let's say you're at $400,000 and then you're now only at $200,000. You still may have an IRMA, but maybe we will reduce that IRMA. Sometimes the income falls enough to get rid of the IRMA completely. And so there's 3 other options for life-changing events. One is the loss of income-producing property. Now that doesn't mean you sold that property and took a loss on it. What that means is that property, it was in a fire and was destroyed, or it was on a hill in California and it was a mudslide and it's now gone. In other words, you no longer have that income-producing property. Also, a loss of a pension income. So this is when you're receiving a pension and then the pension goes bankrupt and you no longer receive that. So you've lost that income, or what's also called an employer settlement plan. And so the point is, if we have one of these 8 life-changing events, then we have the opportunity to appeal our IRMA if indeed that has affected our income. So again, they're looking back 2 years. And so what we can do through the appeal process, we fill out paperwork that's called an SSA-44. Okay. Now, if you're married, each of you would have to fill one of these forms out. It's very simple to do. We pick the life-changing event. Now, this life-changing event has had to happen in the last couple years. So if it happened 5 years ago, you obviously can't appeal that. But if it's happened after this year here, either it happened in 22 or in 23, you can appeal the IRMAs. And you can use the same life-changing event. Husband and wife can, or the single person can. You can actually use it for 2 different years, because these IRMA calculations occur on an annual basis. All right. And so we pick our life-changing event, we put the date in, and then what we can do is we could say, I'm going to give you my 2022 modified adjusted gross income, or I'm going to give you my 2023 projected modified adjusted gross income, and you can put that on the form. And so what they're doing is they're no longer going to hold that higher amount against you, because now you qualify to appeal. And again, paperwork takes maybe 10 minutes to fill out. We submit it to the local Social Security office, and honestly, I've never seen a case where someone had an adjustment in their income because of a life-changing event where they did not win the appeal. All right, so it's well worth your time to be sure to at least go through the process to make sure that those extra costs, those surtaxes, can be eliminated. Now, again, if your income stays up, again, even though I know it's disappointing, it's still a wonderful problem to have. But again, if it's changed income, take the time to do that. And if you work with us, then we certainly can walk you through this entire process. All right, so those are the costs of Medicare. Before we go on Medicare, while we're on Medicare, and for some, even those additional costs, but those can be appealed through a life-changing event.